On May 6, 1954, Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile, a feat universally believed to be impossible. And within only a few weeks of Bannister's incredible accomplishment, 2 other runners had smashed that same unbreakable barrier again, including Bannister himself. And then within only a few short years, 200 other athletes had done the impossible as well. And as of June 2022, almost 1,700 runners have broken the 4-minute mile, including 18 high schoolers and 2 athletes over 40 years old. Hi, my name's Deb Accomando. I'm part of an underground group of healthcare professionals you probably never even heard of before. We don't rely on the generosity of employers to help us move forward in our lives, and we will not sacrifice our passions and talents to help someone else reach their income goals. In fact, our motivation is the exact opposite. You see, we're driven to live our best lives by pursuing what gives us real career satisfaction, things that we know make us thrive. And because we're fighting against healthcare employers who treat their staff like commodities, companies that pretend to care about us until it's clear that they don't, we had to learn how to do things differently, and we had to learn how to work smarter. We don't have financial safety nets, and any career moves we make have to be aligned with our values and interests. We can't afford to get it wrong. So how do we do that? How is that even possible? If you ask any honest HR professional, they'll probably tell you that the traditional interview process is fundamentally flawed. But it's not just flawed for employers, it's flawed for us too, the people who actually are providing the health care. And if you ask these healthcare employers, they will tell you that what we're trying to do is impossible, yet it's happening every single day. And it's happening through the art and science we call career hacking. So I've created this platform to give you a peek behind the curtain, a peek into the struggles and successes of some of the most impactful physician assistants and other healthcare professionals in the country. Folks just like you, who were able to break through their barriers and reach the other side. And it's through these stories that I hope to inspire you to take your career and your life to a place you might believe is currently impossible. Impossible, just like Roger Bannister's 4-minute mile. We are career hackers, and I want to welcome you to the first episode of InterviewBoss, Career Hacking for PAs. But before we get to our invited guests, I want to tell you a little bit more about me and my story and what I believe is the most crucial part of realizing your career goals. Really, any goal. When I started out my professional journey, I was a clinical social worker working in a prestigious hospital system in New York. Some of you, might remember this story from hearing me speak or, however you found your way to this podcast. What you don't know is that I struggled to find my way in my career. After all the work I did, the undergraduate degree, going to Columbia to get my master's, starting at the bottom in the Psych ED at New York Press, I wasn't even earning enough to move out of my parents' house. I was killing myself at work for 5 years trying to do the best job I could for my patients, coming up with all kinds of ideas to help improve the service, hoping my efforts would, soon get noticed, that maybe, I get a promotion or a raise so I could get my own place, get a new car. I mean, my red Toyota Tercel had like 300,000 miles on it, and the rust on the fender was so bad I could break it off with my fingers. And I was innocent, I would sit down with my supervisor and just, rattle off what I thought were all these amazing ideas that could really help the kids and make the service more efficient, more profitable, so we could even have even more money to help these kids that struggled with severe anxiety that caused them to stop speaking, selective mutism. And I believed I was really good at helping the kids, mainly because I loved them. I was careful to understand what I did that worked. And I wanted to be effective. And there was, nothing I wouldn't do to try and help them. And in my mind, instinctively, I got really creative. And in paying attention to the positive feedback I got more confident in my approach. And with that confidence, it was like I almost got smarter and more effective. And it became a cycle, right? A fantastic, positive cycle. But there came a day when the entire staff got called together for a departmental meeting in front of executive leadership from the hospital. And the VP spoke about, the challenges the department was facing and asked, the meeting participants for, ideas and suggestions to help, address the concerns we had as a service. And of course, I'm aware of all these concerns and challenges, but I was like, sort of low man on the totem pole and, maybe a little bit shy at that point in my career. So I didn't really, want to raise my hand to speak. And, I sat there struggling to decide, like, should I offer all these amazing ideas I'd shared with my supervisor for months, ideas that would definitely make an incredible impact on the service. And I noticed my supervisor stand up, and one by one, she rattles off each and every idea I had shared with her during these, countless informal chats we had. And, at first I was like, oh, great, thank goodness someone's doing it. This is awesome. And then as I watched her complete her overview, I noticed that she never even turned to look at me. She didn't say, hey, these ideas came from Deb, or something like even, my staff helped me develop these ideas. Nothing. And when I spoke to her later, I asked her, I said, why didn't you mention that I was the person who came up with these ideas? And the only thing she said was, oh, don't be a baby, Deborah. Welcome to real life. I never thought something like that could happen to me. Like, I felt like a baby. I felt like a fool. And so there I was, devastated. And I knew I couldn't work for her anymore. I couldn't do it. And I had to make a change. But I had no money. I lived in my parents' house. It was the same house I grew up in. And my car's falling apart. I had, student loans. I had spent all this time and effort building myself into this great clinician. And I realized, hey, I don't know how to do anything else. And I also realized if I went somewhere else, I'd probably have to start at the same level and the same kind of pay scale. And so, wasn't looking good. And so after a series of failed attempts at different career directions, I ended up talking to an executive recruiter who was a little bit younger than me. And I went to see her to see if she couldn't help me find a job that could leverage, my clinical skills in the business world. And she was good. I mean, she really listened to me and she tried to really understand what I was looking for, what made me passionate. And I thought, she'd make a good social worker. She has all the skills you need to be successful. So I ended up talking to my boyfriend at the time, he's now my husband and business partner. And I told him all about this recruiter and how great she was. And he was like, well, if she'd make a great social worker, maybe you'd make a great recruiter. And I was like, are you crazy? I don't know the first thing about recruiting. I'm a behavioral health clinician, right? I'm not a business person. I work with kids. And I have no idea what recruiters even do. I mean, like, who would hire me? So after a long talk, he convinces me, at least apply for some open positions, recruiting positions in Manhattan and see what it's all about. What's the worst that could happen? They don't hire you and you're back to where you are right now, right, in limbo. So I dusted off my resume. I mean, I don't know, maybe I didn't even change it at all, but I just sent it with a cover letter and said, I'm ready to make a change. And I think I could leverage all my listening and people skills from my clinical life to be a great recruiter. Did I really believe that? Absolutely not. I mean, I was sick to my stomach as I thought about like going into the city to interview for a job I had no experience handling, for a job I didn't even understand completely. My only saving grace was I was sure that no recruiting firm was going to even interview me, so it wouldn't happen anyway. And once a couple of weeks go by, I could just tell my husband, see, I told you it would never happen. So, a couple of weeks later, and I get a call from an HR department of a large recruiting firm in Manhattan, one of the firms I sent my resume to. And they were like, yeah, we got your resume. We'd like to interview you for a job recruiting nurses and PAs. My heart almost jumped out of my chest. And I almost said, hey, you know what? I'm all set. But I changed my mind. And for some reason, I didn't say that. I just went through my calendar and we picked a day and a time and boom, I was scheduled to interview with the head of their new healthcare recruiting division. So the interview day finally comes. I feel sick, right? I was like, what am I doing? I don't know anything about recruiting. And what am I going to say when they ask me how I'm going to do the job? All right, so I get on the train, I find my way to the office, and I'm all dressed up in my interview suit, and I get to the reception desk, and I tell the lady my name, and she says, okay, Deborah, your interviewer will be with you in like 20 minutes, and meanwhile, I need you to take this test. And I was like, test? What test? No one said anything about a test. She was like, yeah, it's no big deal. It's called a caliper, and every candidate takes one, and they'll be able to assess whether you have the core skills to be a recruiter. So I don't know how this came out of my mouth, but I'm like, well, what if the test comes back, like not so great? And so she paused and she looked up and she's like, well, then you're probably going to have a short interview. Good luck. And I was like, oh, God. All right. So I get into the room and I have this test in my hand and I'm thinking like, you know what? Screw it. If I blow the test, fine. It means I'd probably suck at the job and I'd better know now. And if I do great, then, it means maybe I'll be good at it and we'll go from there. So I take the test. Someone comes back in to take, the papers from me, and I'm just like sort of sitting there, and I'm daydreaming. I'm probably dreaming about being on the beach in Tahiti or something. And suddenly the door opens, and this guy I've never seen before, comes in and he introduces himself as the head of the healthcare recruiting division. And he was super friendly right off the bat, and I was like, wow, this could be a good sign, right? And so he explains to me that the test results revealed that I had the ideal personality to be a successful executive recruiter, that my profile matched some of the company's best recruiters, and they were really interested in hiring me. And I was like, what? Then it occurred to me, if my profile matched the most successful recruiters they had, then I'd probably be great at the job. And all of a sudden, sitting in that conference room in Manhattan, there was a shift that happened in my entire body. I completely believed I could do the job. And for the rest of the interview, I became a completely different person, right? I was suddenly relaxed. I could think, I could speak. I was funny and I was engaging and I crushed it. And they hired me on the spot. And the only thing that changed is what I believed about myself. Once I believed I could do the job, everything changed. I tapped into my potential and my anxiety melted away and I just got in the zone, right? The truth is the test they gave me was just a test. It wasn't a crystal ball and it couldn't predict the future. If it could, that's all you'd ever need, right? Just take a test and sit back and let the magic happen. And I realized right then and there that what you believe about yourself has everything to do with the amount of potential you tap into. And the more you believe, the more potential you tap into. The more potential you tap into, the more work you do to achieve the results that you're after. And the more work you do to achieve those results, the better results you get. And the better results you get, the more certainty you develop in your belief. And the more you believe, the more potential you're going to tap into. Make sense? It's called the success loop. And if you think about it, the reverse is also true as well, right? The less you believe that you're able to do something, the less potential you tap into. And the less potential you tap into, the less work you do. And, when you do less work, what happens? The crappier results. And what happens when you get crappy results? You say, see, I told you this wasn't going to work. And the cycle continues down from there until you hit a really bad place. And that's what we're trying to avoid with all of this. So the key here is to tap into this positive part of the success loop right from the beginning. Make sense? And it all starts with imagining success for yourself. You need to imagine yourself succeeding in launching your career, in getting those remaining qualifications buttoned down, and getting a new resume and cover letter drafted, in landing your dream job, and living the best version of you that you could imagine. And it all starts in your mind, right? It starts with a vision of what's possible. It starts with an aim. What's your aim? All right, that's all I've got for you today. I want to welcome you again to our Career Hacking Tribe. In our next episode, we're going to take a deep dive into the 8 different career hacking aims that we're going to cover in the podcast, including money, impact, freedom, change and transition, social good, innovation, entrepreneurship. We're even going to sprinkle in some beauty and fashion, right? Just to keep it like fun and light. Until next time, dream big and have faith. The universe always makes room for those that believe.